I first became interested in our topic today, the Egyptian Trail, when I saw this map, the left-hand map. Most of these maps are 1917 maps of early auto trails. I don't think I'd even heard the word auto trail. Probably I have, because my interest in Route 66 led me to read a lot of books about early transportation, so I probably knew the term. But it was, this map on the left-hand side was in Daniel McCullum's History of Champaign County, in the chapter about transportation. And ignore the numbers; those numbers don't mean anything. They're just, they are associated with the key that you see in the upper right-hand corner. So those aren't route numbers. Early auto trails predated state-sanctioned and federally sanctioned numbered highways. The Egyptian Trail was one of a handful of these kinds of named trails in East Central Illinois that I discovered by looking at this map. And I always felt like when I have time, I'm gonna track these things down. And finally I was able to retire and spend some time doing just that. These early auto trails were created by good roads advocates, so-called good roads advocates, in the middle teens of the early 20th century. They're kind of cousins to more famous early auto trails like the Lincoln Highway that crosses northern Illinois, the Dixie Highway that comes down from Chicago through Danville and then heads all the way to Florida. All part of the same general movement. People would subscribe to support the association that would be formed, and the association would go about meeting with landowners, business owners, and trying to educate people on how they could improve and keep roads up to the point where auto traffic could travel. Let's stay there. Just a quick survey of the trails that you see here, and I'm not going to go through them all, but the major ones were the Waubonsee Trail, which ran east and west through the county. I've driven the Waubonsee Trail from Danville to Monticello so far, and that's going to be my next project. The Diagonal Trail, which ran pretty much along the railroad tracks, the big four tracks between Danville and Urbana, and then slipped at an angle up to Mahomet and on to Bloomington and beyond. The Egyptian Trail, the north-south route that you see there that is numbered 27, but remember again, those numbers didn't mean anything. That was a great mystery to me for a long time, until I finally found online, you can, the Illinois Department of Education has every highway map that has been produced by the Secretary of State's office digitized. And so and you'll see this at the end of the presentation, on the 1924 map, I finally figured out, oh, this is a key. There's like almost 90 of these things in Illinois, and everyone was assigned a number on the key, but they weren't numbered back in the day. They were designated with unique names and a particular color scheme that would be painted on telephone poles, and then eventually there would be some signage, but this is a real brief period of time. They followed existing dirt roads, and we'll get into that process in a minute. These early auto trails really involved no new construction, and from 1912, when the Waubonsee Trail was marked through this part of the state, until the early 1920s, when the state of Illinois passed a legislation to get into the highway business, and the auto trails sort of died out, or replaced by numbered highway systems and paving and things like that. So the Egyptian Trail ran from Chicago to Cairo in southern Illinois. That's where it gets its name from, the Little Egypt part of southern Illinois where the two rivers come together. Much of the following comes from James Wright's book, The Egyptian Trail in Illinois. He wrote that the project was the brainchild of two Mattoon men, Dr. Iverson A. Lumpkin and Ernest B. Tucker, who were keen boosters of their community and ardent auto enthusiasts. Beginning in 1915, a notice began appearing in newspapers up and down what the route was going to be. and announcing the organization of an Egyptian Trail Association. It was to follow as closely as possible the Illinois Central Railroad. Mattoon Journal-Gazette reported on the meeting, which took place June 15th, 1915. Lumpkin and Tucker were named president and secretary of the organization, and vice presidents from towns along the line were to be named later, and that's going to turn out to be important. The Egyptian Trail, the Mattoon Journal-Gazette reported, is to be blazed with pyramids of orange and letters ET in black. Existing roads to be designated part of the trail will be selected by local vice presidents, working with county and township road commissioners. Now, being a vice president along the way gave you a lot of power in determining which road and which route it was going to follow through your section of the trail's path. And this is going to turn out to be advantageous for a few gentlemen in Champaign County. A week before this organizational meeting in Mattoon, the Champaign Daily News on June 8th reported that Dr. Lumpkin, along with 11 Mattoon businessmen, met with several members of the Champaign Chamber of Commerce at the Beardsley Hotel to discuss the project. C.A. Kyler, owner of the home furnishing store in downtown Champaign, spoke at the gathering, and he would later be named as section vice president for the project. He proposed a route that ran through Champaign, and conveniently right past his Main Street store, which we'll see in a minute. After a proposed route was approved, it was at first blazed with painted markings on telephone poles, and eventually an official 12 by 18-inch sign with special yellow background, actually more of an orange color, the Paxton Record reported, on which appeared a black pyramid with the block letters E and T, also painted in black. So that's my best guess. I've never been able to find anything but a black and white version of this sign, so I made one up myself. I don't know if that's the right color, yellowish orange or not, but we're just going to go with it. Local newspapers followed the progress of the project in Champaign County closely. The Urbana Daily Courier on June 18th reported on the Trail Association meeting in Mattoon, where section vice presidents from the area were named, including 4 people highlighted there in yellow from Champaign County. Champaign Daily News on July 7th reported, James Clark of Rantoul was in Urbana this morning on his way to Mattoon, where he intended to make an effort to have the Egyptian Trail pass through Urbana. Despite Mr. Clark's efforts, the Champaign alignment continued to be favored. The Courier on July 29th, C.E. Kelso and Son and George Fiedler were in Urbana Friday laying out the route of the Egyptian Trail. Now, Kelso and Fiedler were business owners in Thomasboro. Kelso was also a section vice president. The paper reported, the route will come past the Kelso and Fiedler store. Thence west a mile and thence south directly into Champaign on Neal Street. Well, we'll look at that route in a little bit. It was a little bit more of a zigzag and wound up coming into town on Market Street before it made its way into downtown. The Courier reported on August 30th, a man with a bucket of yellow paint was here in Ludlow in a buggy and made yellow markings with the initials of the trail, ET, on the telegraph poles. It also describes the route that the trail would follow from Ludlow to Paxton. Coming up from the south, the trail traverses the Corbett Road, turns east at the L.N. Bear store, and runs 1 mile, 1.5 miles, and then turns north straight into Paxton. Of course, Mr. L.N. Bear was also a vice president. So obviously the biggest challenge to these early auto trails was road conditions. Trails used existing dirt roads created for horse and wagon traffic that were barely maintained. The biggest issue with these dirt roads was dust in the dry times and mud during the wet times. As more auto trails were established, these problems were being addressed by applying a layer of oil to mitigate the dust and compact the roadway. Roads were also dragged and graded to smooth the surface and allow better water runoff into side ditches. There was a whole campaign to get farmers to learn how the government published these pamphlets, like how to use a road drag. And there was lots of newspaper articles commenting on the oiling of local roads. Daily News, May 3rd, 1916, declared Friday, May 13th is to be observed as Good Roads Day. Local highway commissioners along the trail and throughout the county would participate by dragging and otherwise improving highways. Numerous articles in the summer of 1916 and 17 reported on the oiling and grading that was being undertaken on the Egyptian Trail in Rantoul, Somer, and Champaign townships. The Daily News reported on August 16, 1917, oil is regarded as the best material to use until a real hard road can be built. The biggest boost for better roads, though, came in 1918, when a referendum to issue $60 million in bonds for road improvement and the development of a state highway system was passed by Illinois voters. The man credited with the bond issue success was William G. Edens, president of the Illinois Highway Improvement Association. With this, the Courier wasted no time reviving the idea that the Egyptian Trail, which was set to become a state highway under the improvement plan, should be routed through Urbana rather than through Champaign. On December 19th, the Courier editors wrote, "Urbana does not stand a ghost of a show for getting that bond issue road she is after unless she can show plans are underway for the paving of Cunningham Avenue when the State Highway Commission gets here to look the situation over." The piece continued, "Urbana has objected to the proposed road coming along the Egyptian Trail from Rantoul to Champaign as provided for in the preliminary survey, pointing out that Cunningham Avenue was the logical route both from a topographical and economical standpoint." The first pavement on rural portions of the Egyptian Trail in Champaign County came in the form of bricks laid along the route south out of Champaign towards Savoy. The Courier reported on May 19, 1919, 1919, the state road aid would fund the project, and southward from the Savoy Road pulling out of Champaign that extends the brick pavement from town along the Egyptian Trail almost to Savoy. As efforts to secure funds for local projects from the $60 million bond issue continued through the summer of 1919, improvements became synonymous with paving, and so-called good roads advocates were transformed into hard road enthusiasts. Reports that the roads north out of Champaign remained woefully unimproved just added more fuel to the movement to have the state route, the road that would become State Route 25, go east from Champaign through Urbana and from there north to Rantoul. On April 16, 1920, the Courier reported 400 people descended upon the courthouse in Urbana to attend a public hearing held by the State Highway Commission regarding the proposed state bond Route 25. Attendees from every community from Kankakee to Effingham that had a stake in the project attended. A spokesperson for each group was given 15 minutes to advocate for the route to come through their community. The article noted that while no decisions were made there did seem to be an undercurrent of sentiment in favor of keeping with the Egyptian Trail route north out of Champaign. That sentiment would prove to be short-lived. The final decision on the route through Champaign-Urbana came in 1922. In a 2015 News Gazette article, Tom Kasich reported that the state highway officials agreed to bring Route 25 through Urbana if the city would build an adequate trunk highway through the city. Urbana voters approved a $30,000 bond issue to fund the improvements, which brought the highway east from Champaign to Urbana, initially via Green Street and through campus, which that surprised me. I thought it had always gone east on Springfield, but for the first 10 years or so, it went right through campus on Green Street. Through campus, then to downtown Urbana, north to Rantoul on Vine, going out Vine and Cunningham. At the request of university officials, that route east was changed to Springfield, Wright, and University as we know it today. The Egyptian Trail officially became State Route 25 from Kankakee to Effingham in 1924. By 1930, highway maps had begun to change the designation to US Highway 45. All right, we're going to take a quick walk from north to south on the trail. I put this together by using details from early maps from the archives, from descriptions that I got out of newspaper articles, and I'm pretty sure I've got the original route that you see here in yellow. Yellow is the original route, and this is like around 1917, before the transition. To the left, you see the blue diagonal route that runs along the railroad more directly. That shift was made gradually in the early 1920s. And a lot of that pavement, a lot of that 1920 alignment pavement still exists. The yellow original route, of course, those are all now county roads, practically the whole way from the north end to the south end of the county. So let's see, and the orange stars that you see on there are going to be places where I either took photographs or found period photographs that we could take a look at. So reversing the description from the Ludlow story I told you earlier, we see the original trail coming into Champaign County from the north, straight south out of Paxton, until it hits what is now US 136 and turns west into I'm ahead of myself. West into Ludlow, not on County Highway 9. The trail entered Ludlow on Pierce Street and then turned south at the Ellen Bear store. I found a commercial building. It's kind of hard to see, but got to use the more into the red thing. Look at that. There we go. So I think that was the Ellen Bear store. This is a 1913 Atlas plat of Ludlow. So you see the route coming in and then going south. It went south out of town on Orange Street. Some pictures of downtown Ludlow. Starting all the way at the north, the top left corner, northwest, top left corner, that's a piece of existing pavement from the 1920 alignment looking south from the Ford County line. A couple of pictures I took from downtown, that same alignment which you can drive today, and you can see kind of the correspondence from a 1920 downtown aerial picture. And you can see the brickwork here on this building is this building. And this is the road going along the railroad that you see here going north and here going south. Originally, the trail headed south out of Ludlow on Orange Street into the country. It then turned west and crossed the railroad track, then zigzagged back across the track, continuing south. There's a bit of north-south road that I show in orange, the orange dotted line there, that is no longer there now. The original alignment picks back up where County Road 1700 East veers south from US 45 and becomes County Highway 55. So this is, let's see, there's that veer. Oh, that's on the next slide. Yeah. Now you can see, there it is, I see it down there. This goes back. None of this is there anymore. And of course, that weird double railroad crossing isn't there anymore either. A few pictures of the trail heading south out of Ludlow toward Rantoul. There's some of that existing pavement I've talked to you about. The picture on the far right is taken from this star looking north toward Ludlow. That's a nice little section of the original 1917 alignment. As it nears Rantoul, County Highway 55 becomes Maplewood Drive and connects to what is now US 36, Grove Avenue when you get into town. There the original trail turned west right into downtown. Of course, after 1920, so this is, on the right, the yellow is Maplewood Avenue coming down toward Route 136. And Maplewood Cemetery, there's a little bit of stretch of pavement in the cemetery that you can still drive on. So that's the original alignment coming into downtown Rantoul, then turning south on Chandler, or Century Boulevard now, going west, across the railroad tracks, all the way out to, what's the name of that road? Going south by Murray Road, if you're familiar with Rantoul, that goes right by the Walmart and the big athletic fields that are south out of town, and head south from there. Much of the State Route 25 alignment between Ford County and Thomasville is still visible, not drivable for the most part, overgrown, but you can still see the pavement. Drivable sections run north and south right out of Ludlow, and then parallel and then the little bit that I told you in Maplewood Cemetery. Some pictures of from downtown Urbana around the period, where you see the trail of the original alignment coming in from the east on Grove Avenue, south on Chandler. Past the Methodist Church, you can barely see the Methodist Church in that bottom right-hand corner on the right side, the east side of the road, turning east and turning west. A couple of pictures of downtown. The 1920 alignment goes out of town, basically following the route that 45 takes today. 2.5 miles south of what is now Route 136, the trail across the tracks again. Short bit of road south of there that you see in the dotted line is not there, but you can pick back up at County Road 2700 North, which is mislabeled on the Google Maps there. That should be 2700 North, not east. After a mile, the trail went back across the tracks and turned south into Thomasboro on North Church Street. Oh, I like this. This is the one, the gravel road in the top left-hand corner is the one bit of remaining unpaved original alignment. Everything else is on the county road system has been paved. After a mile of the trail, we did that. We came into Thomasboro. At Main Street in Thomasboro, let's go to Thomasboro. There we go. At Main Street in Thomasboro, the trail went west to Commercial Street, south past the Kelso and Fiedler stores, and along the east side of the railroad tracks to Central Avenue, where it turned west across the tracks and headed out of town. There, when the interstate came through, on the right side you can see there when the interstate came through, it cut off Central Avenue, but you can still see the pavement, and it ends right at the interstate. There's a little concrete bridge there in the top, and then on the opposite side of the interstate there's some existing pavement from the State Route 25. Well, that wouldn't have been State Route 25. That would have been paved county highway, but when it was dirt, that would have been the Egyptian Trail, the early Egyptian Trail. There's also, I've got photos here of the Champaign-Urbana traction station on the east side of the track, on the east side of the road, between the road and the tracks, and right across from that would have been the Methodist Church. You can see them. There's the Methodist Church. The traction off building would have been over here. A couple of pictures of downtown. That bottom left-hand corner is Commercial Street looking north toward downtown Thomasboro. Mr. Kasich's News Gazette article, which celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Egyptian Trail, included a very detailed account of the trail's route from Thomasboro to Champaign. I found that really helpful because this would have been a hard one to figure out just looking at maps. I'm not going to read the complete description, but basically the trail headed west out of Thomasboro. That's point A in the upper right-hand corner. And then turned south to go past St. Elizabeth Cemetery, made a jog west, and then continued south to Leverett Road, which is the B point on the right side there. When it gets to the Leverett Road, when you go past the Leverett Road now, it makes that kind of sweeping curve, but back in the day, it would have just gone straight and then turned straight west. Then continued south, then continued west to Market Street, which had followed into Champaign. On the right side, well, on both maps, showing you the route that it would take to get from Market Street into downtown, turning west on Washington, south on Walnut to Main Street. And the stars are where photos are going to be on the next slide. So coming into town, the trail would have passed the Garwood home at 1515 North Market. That's the only picture I could find of the Garwood home. This is later than the trail would have been. But the two pictures on the upper right show the William A. Johnson Piano Company at 102 North Market, which is the Herff Jones Collegiate Cap and Gown building today. At the curve on Washington, the trail went past the Illinois Central Railroad greenhouses and then past Alexander Lumber Company before coming into town. Here's some pictures of downtown that you would have driven by if you were taking the Egyptian Trail through Champaign. At the top left is the Beardsley Hotel, where the first meeting was held with the Chamber of Commerce to talk about and where Mr. Kyler was elected a vice president. You can see Mr. Kyler's store in the bottom left-hand corner, and the trail did indeed go right by his store, turning south at Main and Neal Street, and then continuing south, heading towards Savoy. I like the picture in the top left-hand corner because that would be like just a block that way on Green Street, looking toward campus at Neal. So that car in the upper left-hand corner is sitting right at that corner. This had to have been taken after 1924, 1926, because it shows before 1926, because it shows the routes being numbered, and it shows the State Route 10 going east to Danville through campus. From Champaign through Savoy, the original route ran parallel to the tracks along Neal Street and Dunlap Road. With the coming of the state route designation, the Egyptian Trail ran east to Urbana along the same path as State Route 10 would follow back then. It entered Tolono on Long Street. Well, that just kind of take a minute here to see the two variations of the route east. The earliest went right through campus. That's the darker line on the bottom. And then after 1936, I believe, the route was shifted up to Springfield and then Wright and then University, like we know it today. That 150 follows that today. Here's the trail coming into Pesodum, and or into Tolono first and then into Pesodum. It came into Tolono on Long Street, and then just before it got to the Wabash tracks, it turned west, went out of town on Austin Street, and then turned south across the tracks on President County Highway 1000 East. After crossing the tracks, the trail went directly south, no longer following the tracks until it got to Pesotum, entered Pesotum on Elm, turned one block east, and then proceeded to Washington and then continued south. The present sweeping curve, well, there's just a few pictures of downtown Pesotum and Tolono that would have been relatively around the same time. So now we're going south of Pesotum. Chestnut Street ended at what is now County Highway 200 North, just north of where the state police headquarters is. And the trail went west and then turned south and continued on to the Douglas County line. When Interstate 57 came through, that was cut off, so, but you can still go south. Let's do it this way. You can still go south here and then turn and go back up and find the old road there, and it ends here. So the picture here on the left is from here looking toward Pesotum. And this is a nice stretch of drivable pavement from the State Route 25 days that you go down and you follow that curve back around. You start clockwise from the top left, you're looking north, and then you're coming to the curve, and then you're heading, you can see Pesotum in the distance, and that's where it is. Champaign may have lost the fight to keep the highway alignment north out of town, but it certainly, as you can see by this map, remained the focal point for all of these early auto trails. They all passed through downtown Champaign. You look at the right-hand map up here, this is a 1924 map. This is the one where I discovered those numbers corresponded with a key. And you can tell that even by 1924, the Wabanzi Trail is no longer a named trail. That's basically County Highway 14, I think, running out of Urbana, going toward Homer, crossing the river south of St. Joseph, the Salt Fork, south of St. Joseph. So the legacy of these early auto trails we see all the time in the state and federal highways we're familiar with today. The Diagonal Trail, which ran from Danville to Champaign-Urbana and then up through Mahomet on toward Bloomington, at first became State Route 39 west from Champaign, and it was State Route 10 from east from Urbana to Danville. Ultimately, the whole stretch in the 1930s became US 150, and of course that route kind of inspired the route of Interstate 74. Trails going west out of Champaign were eventually designated as State Routes 47 and 10 going to Decatur and Clinton. The Egyptian Trail, which became State Route 25 and later US Route 45 from Effingham to Chicago, was the inspiration for Interstate 57. With the completion of Interstate 57 in the late 1960s, the Champaign Way once again prevailed over Urbana. After I-57 passes west of Champaign and then angles north toward Chicago, a present-day driver can leave the interstate at Market Street, exit 240, go east on Leverett Road, pick up the original Egyptian Trail, and head back to Thomasboro, jogging through the countryside, and on to Rantoul, and then at Rantoul, you can get easily right back on Route 136. So sometime if you're feeling adventurous, that's a good little piece of the road to experience. Take a drive on the old Egyptian Trail, just for fun. or maybe as a tribute to all of those good roads enthusiasts who paved the way for the modern road trip. Thank you for coming out.